Hey there, fellow space fans. You know how much we love NASA around here. So today, we're taking a deep dive into the NASA subreddit. It's like scrolling through the cosmos with a whole bunch of space enthusiasts.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating window into what's really capturing the public's imagination when it comes to space exploration. We get to kind of go beyond the official headlines and see what questions people are really asking.
And trust me, there are some real gems in here. We've got everything from like breathtaking aurora pictures
Yeah.
to some surprisingly practical questions about life as an astronaut. For instance, one user wondered if astronauts ever get sick of being in space.
Hmm. It's a question that really gets at the heart of the human experience in space. We're so used to the feeling of wind on our skin or rain on our face, things that astronauts simply can't experience in the same way. Imagine just longing for the feeling of a cool breeze. That's the reality for those living on the
Right.
ISS.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? It's easy to get caught up in the technical achievements of space travel, but we sometimes forget about the simple things we take for granted here on Earth.
Absolutely. And those sensory experiences are really just the tip of the iceberg. Space travel also means dealing with prolonged microgravity, confinement, and the constant hum of life support systems. It's a very unique and challenging environment that can definitely take a psychological toll.
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of challenges, one of the biggest stories on our NASA right now is the International Space Station's 5-year-long air leak. It sounds pretty alarming when you first hear about it.
It definitely caught my eye, but it's important to understand that it's not like a burst pipe gushing water. Think of it more like a very slow, controlled release of air pressure. It's something that NASA has been monitoring and managing. But it does highlight the fact that the ISS is over 2 decades old.
It's not exactly brand new anymore. Makes you wonder how much longer it can realistically stay operational.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The ISS has far exceeded its initial lifespan, which is a testament to its incredible design and the ongoing maintenance efforts. But as with any aging structure, the repairs become more frequent and complex. It sparks a debate about whether we should keep investing in maintenance or start focusing on a successor.
And that leads us perfectly to the Artemis program, which aims to establish a sustainable presence on the moon. There was a question on NASA about whether the iconic space shuttle boosters were being repurposed for Artemis, sort of like taking parts from your old car to build a new one.
It's a clever thought, and it shows how much people are paying attention to the details. However, those specific boosters were actually part of the Constellation program, which was canceled back in 2010.
The Constellation program. Now, there's a story for another deep dive, but to clarify for our listener, Constellation and Artemis have some key differences, right?
Exactly. While Constellation aimed to return humans to the moon and establish a lunar outpost, Artemis has an even bolder vision. We're talking about landing the first woman and first person of color on the moon, building a sustainable presence there, and eventually using it as a stepping stone for human exploration of Mars.
And speaking of exciting missions, get ready for the Europa Clipper. One listener is already planning their viewing party for the launch on October 10th. They even asked for tips on where to watch it.
That's dedication. It's no wonder, though. The Europa Clipper is one of those missions that really captures the imagination.
Absolutely. But for those who haven't heard about it, what makes the Europa Clipper so special? So we're talking about a mission to Europa. What are Jupiter's moons? Why all the fuss?
Well, imagine a moon covered in ice, but beneath that ice, a vast, potentially life-harboring ocean. That's Europa in a nutshell. And the Europa Clipper is our underwater drone, in a sense, designed to study that hidden ocean without ever needing to land.
Okay, that's way cooler than just sending a drone. But you mentioned a viewing party for the launch. Any tips for our listener on how to make that extra special?
Definitely. First off, location is key. Being near the coast offers a clearer view, often with less light pollution. Plus, many space centers have designated viewing areas, which adds to the excitement. Apps and websites dedicated to tracking launches are your best bet for specific timing and visibility based on your location.
That's super helpful, thanks. And it reminds me of another question from the subreddit. Someone was wondering if those bid flips you hear about with cosmic rays are a real concern for spacecraft.
Mm.
You know where those high-energy particles from space mess with the computer systems? It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It might sound like science fiction, but it's a real phenomenon that engineers have to consider, especially for missions venturing beyond Earth's protective magnetic field. Imagine a critical command getting scrambled mid-mission because of a stray cosmic ray. That's a risk you can't ignore.
So how do they protect against that? Is it like giving this spacecraft extra shielding?
Shielding helps, but the real key is redundancy. Think of it like having backup systems that can double-check each other's work. If one system gets thrown off by a cosmic ray, the others can step in and keep things running smoothly.
That makes sense. It's reassuring to know they've thought of that. But, reading through Tronasa, it's amazing how many different aspects of space exploration people are interested in. For instance, there's this whole thread about how astronauts vote from space.
Yeah, it really highlights how interconnected space travel is with our lives here on Earth. Even something as routine as voting has to be reimagined when you're orbiting the planet at thousands of miles per hour.
It's mind-boggling. But speaking of things back on Earth, there were also a lot of discussions about the future of the International Space Station, with the air leak we talked about earlier. And its age, folks seem concerned about what happens next.
It's a hot topic, and rightfully so. NASA has made it clear that they want to shift their focus towards deep space exploration. Missions like Artemis and the Europa Clipper. This means eventually handing over the reins of low Earth orbit operations to the private sector.
So we're talking about companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin potentially taking over the ISS.
Potentially, but it's not as simple as just handing over the keys. There are concerns about whether commercial companies are truly ready to handle the complex logistics and safety protocols of a permanently crewed space station. And there are questions about funding. Can these companies secure enough financial backing to maintain a continuous presence in orbit?
It sounds like there's still a lot of unknowns. What happens if they can't make it work? Would the U.S. be left without a space station for a while?
That's a real possibility, and it's a scenario that has some experts worried. The U.S. has been a leader in human spaceflight for decades, but a gap in low Earth orbit presence would be a significant setback. The next few years will be crucial in determining how this transition plays out.
It's definitely a complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah.
But one thing that struck me about all the CERNASA discussions we've been looking at is how much people seem to care about international collaboration in space.
It's true. There's a recognition that space exploration shouldn't be a competition between nations, but rather a shared human endeavor. And there were some great examples of that on our NASA, like the upcoming European Space Agency's Hera mission.
Yes. The follow-up to NASA's DART mission. That one really got people talking. I mean, who doesn't love the idea of crashing a spacecraft into an asteroid, right? It's like a cosmic game of billiards.
Yeah, it was a bold move, and a successful one at that. DART was a test to see if we could deflect a potentially hazardous asteroid, and the results were promising. Hera will rendezvous with that same asteroid system to get a closer look at the aftermath of the impact.
It's like a cosmic forensics team gathering evidence after the big Planetary Defense experiment. I love it. It's amazing how far we've come in terms of not just exploring space, but potentially protecting ourselves from it.
Yeah, it's a great example of how space exploration forces us to think long-term and consider challenges we might not have even imagined a few decades ago. And it's not just about asteroids either.
You're right. I remember seeing posts about space debris, the ethics of colonizing other planets, even the possibility of mining asteroids for resources.
Exactly. These are real issues with huge implications for the future of humanity. It's encouraging to see people engaging with these complex topics and realizing that space exploration isn't just about what's out there, but how it connects to our lives here on Earth.
It's a great reminder that space exploration is about so much more than just cool rockets and breathtaking images, though those are definitely a huge perk.
Speaking of breathtaking images, we can't talk about NASA without mentioning the incredible visuals people share. Those stunning auroras shimmering above Earth, those detailed close-ups of Martian craters, those mind-blowing nebulae captured by space telescopes.
Seriously, some of those pictures look like they were ripped straight out of a science fiction movie. I know I've spent way too much time getting lost in those image threads.
They have a way of reminding you of just how vast and mysterious the universe truly is. Even the most knowledgeable astronomer will tell you we've only just scratched the surface of what's out there.
It's both humbling and inspiring at the same time, It makes you realize there's always something new to discover, always another question to ask.
And that's what makes places like NASA so important. They foster that sense of wonder and encourage people from all walks of life to share their passion for space. You don't need a PhD in astrophysics to appreciate the beauty of a distant galaxy. Or the ingenuity of a robotic explorer.
Absolutely. It's a community driven by curiosity and a shared love for all things space. So as we wrap up our own little deep dive into the world of NASA, what's the biggest takeaway you're left with?
For me, it's the reminder that space exploration is a journey we're all on together. It's about pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, exploring the unknown, and inspiring future generations to reach for the stars.
Beautifully said. And to our listener, if there's one thing we hope you take away from this deep dive, it's this. Never stop asking questions. Never lose that sense of wonder. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one sharing your own incredible discoveries with the world.